But next on the presenter list, we have Katie Lira coming to talk about her research, which explores the intersections of race, gender, and cannabis. Katie Lira is the first combined Bachelor's of Arts and Master's of Arts in the Department of Sociology.
Understanding of the historical, ideological, and cultural context framing the social construction of race and gender as critical markers of our social identity. Cultural trends regarding these groups most often reflect the economic values present in modern capitalism. The global systemization of such systems has only further pushed this separatist narrative. Dominant forces have worked for centuries to continuously reproduce racialized ideas of white superiority, which places emphasis on their need to subordinate, erase, and brutalize marked Black and brown bodies. From this, we understand how notions of race greatly influence the consciousness with which we use to navigate society. The historical process of racialization as we know it undoubtedly reflects the notions of an exploitable workforce formed under colonial capitalist conditions. When combined with global capitalist relations of production, we see how concepts of racialized and gendered labor perpetuate the availability of a socially vulnerable and readily exploitable labor force. Existing research on this topic with regards to cannabis industry is somewhat limited, offering examinations that are more singularly focused on race or gender. In contrast, my research examines how race and gender interact to shape critically unique experiences in the industry. Previous to the events of the Mexican Revolution, America had a widely celebrated hemp fiber industry that had existed since pre-colonial times. It wasn't until a combination of Mexican immigration and the Great Depression era financial strife that white Americans began to perceive hemp as a threat, even referring to it by the Spanish name marijuana in an attempt to connect the drug with the Spanish-speaking immigrant population. The sudden shift in attitude towards a once indifferent crop was spearheaded by many powerful figures. The popularized image of the Mexican immigrant linked with marijuana became internationally normalized around the 1920s with the advancement of an infamous anti-marijuana movement, reefer madness. It was the racial prejudice surrounding marijuana that was key for enacting prohibition at the federal level via the Marijuana Tax Act in 1937. Harry Jacob Anslinger from the Federal Bureau of Narcotics heavily advocated for federal prohibition of marijuana starting in the 1920s, with a campaign that spread myths of the use of cannabis as inducing violence within its users, particularly those of Mexican descent. Aided by political moral entrepreneurs like that of William Randolph Hearst, who saw the hemp plant as a financial threat to lumber, which he was heavily invested in. A quote from the Congress deliberation on the prohibition of cannabis sums up the mindset well. The Mexican population cultivates on average 2 to 3 tons of the weed annually. This the Mexican makes into cigarettes, which they sell at 2 for 25 cents, mostly to white school students. We must remind French skeptics that the great majority of indulgers are ignorant and inexperienced youngsters and members of the lowest strata of humanity. When you think this fact over, there should be no room for argument. The Marijuana Tax Act passed with little resistance, placing ludicrous fines on the cultivation, use, or exportation of loco weed. The racialized stereotypes created during early drug policies undoubtedly continue to play a role in the institutional racism prevalent in our contemporary justice system. One study by political science professors Kenneth Michael Wyatt and Mariah H. Holman published a figure depicting the disparity in marijuana arrests among different racial groups in the 2000s. Despite equal use of marijuana reported in all groups, whites were found to be far underrepresented in the California prison population in proportion to their general population. In contrast to the underrepresentation of whites versus Hispanics in arrests for marijuana, Black Americans are greatly overrepresented, making up almost 21% of arrests while simultaneously only making up around 6% of the general population. Black and Hispanic people make up approximately 40% of substance abuse treatment programs in America. However, these same populations are 4 to 8% less likely to complete such programs due to lack of socioeconomic resources. The same policies that disproportionately target people of color in incarceration fail to provide resources that allow for true rehabilitation. The result is a perpetuation of racist sensationalism that dehumanizes Hispanic and Black Americans while denying systemic and organizational inequalities that led them there. Outside the justice system, groups of color still face numerous obstacles in the realm of cannabis that prevent them from achieving mainstream success. My focus lies in particular in the normative employment of historically marginalized individuals for farm labor. While employees on farms do boast a diverse range of backgrounds, the industry relies on the profit it extracts from non-white labor. Speaking more regionally, several interview participants cited the well-known reputation among individuals in the industry, known not only for their willingness to work in cheaper, more hazardous living conditions, but their unmatched labor output, known for completing more work at an exponentially faster rate than any of their counterparts. Similarly, the reputation of Mexican and other Latin American immigrants is like that of most agricultural work. Put best by one interviewee, when people are looking for a crew to get things done quickly and efficiently at a decent price, they hire people from Mexico. Though these racialized ideas surrounding groups of color may appear in their favor, the consequence is a disproportionate struggle for establishing oneself within the industry. With already scarce opportunity to maintain stability, the problem is only compounded from a racial perspective. Within both the legal and illicit cannabis market, permanent job prospects most often are delegated to white men. Though these groups of color are often praised for their quality work in trimming and harvesting, there is little opportunity to move up in the chain of command or even establish permanent employment on a farm. Cannabis revels in the beauty and the destruction of the female form, the flowering bud of the unfertilized female plant, the coveted product. Yet, on the altar of weed grow culture, women have found themselves devoured and sacrificed by an industry steeped in sexism. Women, and specifically women of color, face a unique subset of psychosocial and physical dangers in male-dominated spaces. The presence of any individual deemed socially outside of the standard parameters of white and male is most often met with two reactions: antagonism or sexualization. Undocumented women are subject to particularly brutal experiences in the industry, often enduring food scarcity, physical and sexual violence, trafficking, and community isolation, combined with a fear of legal consequences that discourages them from seeking supportive services. This hostile attitude can make shared spaces uncomfortable or even genuinely hazardous to women's health and well-being. One interview participant in my ongoing research recalls how she felt the need to stop using communal cooking spaces at her former farm job due to the growing expectations of her male coworkers who wanted her to cook their every meal. Further isolation on a cannabis farm, already far from any other civilization, proved to heighten her symptoms of depression and paranoia, exemplifying how women in the industry face a distinctive set of environmental and social obstacles that can directly affect their mental health. Every person I interviewed thus far, regardless of gender identity, recounted stories of the sexual harassment of female laborers. I found it particularly intriguing that each individual had a unique story, witnessing women offered additional money to trim cannabis while topless. However, objectification of the female body does not occur solely on farms. Sexualized marketing and branding is a huge problem facing the retail side of the industry. The female body is often used as a physical prop to advertise cannabis. This view of women as a sexual prop only further feeds into the patriarchal views present. By creating an attitude of inevitability around the objectification of women in the industry, they are pressured into submitting themselves to violently patriarchal ideas. Cultural terms like grow hoes or booth bitches only solidify this point, showcasing how social agents like slang work to normalize the objectified and dehumanized roles of women in the scene. When combined with global capitalist relations of production, we see how concepts of racialized and gendered labor perpetuate a socially vulnerable and exploitable workforce. Exploring the unique experiences of racial and gendered groups is significant because current regulation and policy focus essentially on cultivation and environmental resource management. While these are undeniably important, they neglect the socio-political aspects of the cannabis industry. Additionally, the regional importance of these cultural understandings cannot be understated. The Emerald Triangle boasts a lengthy and colorful history with cannabis cultivation, and by understanding the processes that have affected the industry on a global scale, it becomes apparent which parts of that culture were fed by the ongoing hegemonic ideas of white male superiority. My aim with this research is to bring attention to the ongoing lives of issues of those who bring the bud to life. However, changing laws do little to mend the issue of marginalized people already imprisoned in the system for nonviolent charges like possession of marijuana. The solution for some seems to be a call for immediate expungement for all nonviolent drug crime violators. While the dissolution of all charges against those who have faced this unequal system does not undo the damage placed on the individual, it is crucial to no longer allow innocent people to be punished under a system that has become so lax about the recreational use of marijuana. Finally, I hope this research serves as a form of empowerment, encouraging people to make more informed choices on ethical consumption of cannabis. Money talks, and using our power as consumers to demand ethical treatment of cannabis workers sends an impactful message to those who partake in these oppressive systems. We see you, and we will not stand for it anymore. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Thanks for being here. That was great. Thank you, Katie. That was a wonderful presentation to segue us into this conversation around equity. My name's Seth LaRosa. I'm a graduate student researcher at the University of California, Berkeley, and I work there at the Cannabis Research Center as well as a research assistant on a number of different projects. Today we're going to, could we go next slide? Thank you, Celeste. Briefly, I'd like to just talk about what we're going to get into. We're going to do this little welcome moment. We're going to meet our panelists. We're going to talk with you guys a little bit and meet you. Then we're going to get into our questions. We're going to talk about what is equity to different people in different places. What does it mean? How is it operationalized? And we're also going to talk about how equity connects to environmental stewardship. First of all, I don't have a microphone on. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, good. Excellent. Thank you. And then lastly, we'll talk with you guys a little bit about some Q&A, and we'll do that with this format called Mentimeter. Yes. Okay, and that's going to use. Oh, thank you. Oh, is this for the webcast? You need me on here? Okay. So Mentimeter is going to rely on this QR code business. I know this is sometimes, not everybody's favorite thing to do, but if you could take a moment, I'm going to be talking about some other stuff. And if you could take a moment and get yourself set up, because this will help with some of the Q&A and the back and forth that we're expecting. And I'm going to sit and join my panelists. Okay. This is my first time moderating, so I want to hand it over to the panelists who really have the expertise for what we'll be talking about. But I am going to chat for just a few minutes because that is what we do in academia. Okay. So many of us know some of this, but I'm just going to go through it real quickly anyway. In 2016, voters passed California's Prop 64, right? Legalizing adult use cannabis. 64 granted counties and cities local control. And this meant that each jurisdiction decides whether or not to allow cannabis businesses and how those businesses would be regulated. This has created a patchwork across the state of different cannabis ordinances and policies that cultivators, business owners, regulators, policymakers have to sort of navigate. It's difficult. Prop 64 wasn't just about legalization of recreational cannabis. It had specific goals built in. The law promised to stop punitive approaches to marijuana offenses, to reinvest cannabis tax revenue into after-school programs, job training, mental health treatment, and into the communities most harmed by enforcement. The measure specifically aimed to right the wrongs of prohibition and ensure that all Californians could equitably engage in this new regulated sector. Now here we are 10 years later since the passage of Prop 64. How can we meaningfully evaluate if the regulated cannabis industry is in fact equitable? With 58 counties and over 40 million people in California, measuring equity has to take into consideration the sociocultural differences across this vast state. Quite simply, equity means different things in different places. So this brings us to today's topic, equity in the cannabis industry and in cannabis policy, and its connection to environmental stewardship here in California. So with that, let's introduce the panel. If I could ask each of you just to briefly do like your name and title, and then we'll get back around. So go ahead, Dana, you can start us off.
Thank you, Seth. Dana Hauser, my title, cultivator, entrepreneur, and president of the Hayfork Chamber of Commerce.
Alan Archuleta, I'm vice chairman of Moortown Rancheria, located in Orville, California. Also the author of The Gospel of Hemp, How Hemp Can Save Our World. It's available in 179 countries for either free or $1.99 or less. It's free on Amazon and Google Play Books.
Hey everyone, good morning. Peng Lao or Peng Lor here, and I'm a community researcher with the UC Berkeley Cannabis Research Center, and I'm based in Fresno, unceded territory of the Yakots and Manos people.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Kason Grady. I'm a supervising water resource control engineer in the North Coast Water Quality Control Board, State Environmental Protection Agency.
Good morning, I'm Laura Herrera. I'm a financial analyst and coordinator of grants and special programs at Merritt College in the Bay Area, and I'm also an affiliated researcher with the Berkeley Cannabis Research Center.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. It's nice to meet you all. And let's go to the audience now. So can we do our next slide? All right. Using this platform that you just set up on your phone, you should see this question. Feel free to just let us know where you're from. This could be geographically, what city or county you're from, what agency you represent, really whatever you want. And hopefully this works. Oh, it is. It's working. All right, so we can see in the room. All right, we have people down in the San Francisco area. That's where I'm coming from. Bay Area, there it is. Eureka, I used to live here in Arcata.
Hey,
Ferndale, Grass Valley, all right. Alameda County representing. Okay, Mendocino County, that's where my farm used to be. This is excellent. Okay, I wasn't sure if this, I haven't used this system before. Thank you to Laura for recommending Mentimeter. I haven't tried this yet, but this is neat. Yeah, so wonderful. Let's take another moment. This is great. Let's go to the next slide. I have another couple of questions for you guys. It's nice to see people from all over the state. This is wonderful. What do you do? Yeah, why are you here? What is your interest? Are you simply, I was going to put other, and then we chose cannabis enthusiast as opposed to other. So are you simply an enthusiast? Are you a regulator? Are you an educator? Are you a student? Let us know. I didn't count on having to turn around to look. That was the only problem.
Can you,
I wonder, can we, I
here?
don't know. Let's see if we can see it. Advocate would have been a good one, yes.
Oh, there. Yeah, it's live. Cool. Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, we can see. Okay, this is excellent, great. And let's go one more, please. Okay, let's get into it. So this is really what we're here to talk about today. I'm going to just take a few minutes. I know I said I would already, be done, but I'll just take a few minutes more, talk about equity. Kind of more broadly, I looked it up because, I have my own working definition. Let's go to the next slide. And I think this is the general definition that people understand. Equity is about fairness. It's about making sure that people are treated the same way, even people with different racial backgrounds, different genders, different ethnicities. This is kind of what I generally think about as equity. Next slide, please, Celeste. There's also specific financial definitions for the word, right? I think we know about this in terms like sweat equity, right? Or I have equity in a corporation, like you have a stake or an interest or a share of something. There's a value associated with equity. Let's go to the next slide, please. And then lastly, there's some juridical or legal definitions, right? Equity is about rules as well. It's about maybe changing the rules that exist to make them more fair. Or as it says at the bottom here, to enlarge, supplement, or override a narrow or rigid system of laws. So we could think, sorry, one more slide. The way that this is operationalized at the state level, I think many of us are aware of this program, is the equity grants for local jurisdictions, where the state basically said, where the governor's office of business administration, so GoBiz, basically decided to hand out sums of money from the cannabis tax that would go to local jurisdictions for different equity needs. And again, what does that mean really? So as you go to these local jurisdictions, let's go to the next one. You have places like Mendocino County, where I used to grow cannabis. Now in Mendocino County, you only need one of these, you need to meet one of these qualifications. So like people 5 miles from a camp raid, for instance. Now a friend of mine that grew up in Mendo, grew up in Brook Trails, and was like everybody in Brook Trails was 5 miles of a camp raid. Everybody in Ukiah is 5 miles. Pretty much everybody in Mendocino County that lived there and grew up there has been 5 miles from a camp raid because they were pretty prevalent in the 90s and early 2000s. So that's what you need to be an equity operator in Mendo. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. Whereas in Oakland, you have to meet all three requirements. You have to live on a particular street, a particular police beat. You have to have not just an arrest, but a conviction. Those of us that have been tangled up in the criminal justice system, ideally you avoid the conviction, but if you were arrested and didn't avoid the conviction, you could become an equity operator, otherwise you couldn't. Maybe you hustled pretty well and you didn't live on a bad police beat. Maybe you lived up in Piedmont. You also couldn't become an equity operator. So the rules are different. What it comes down to is equity means different things in different contexts. So let's go back to you for one more moment, and then I swear we'll finally get to the panelists. Thank you. So one more time, with this little background, what does equity mean to you in your jurisdictions, in your locales? What does it mean in your system? And then we're going to turn that over to you guys, and we're going to talk a bit with you about equity in your specific realm of the cannabis industry. Oh, I hope it works. Is this the one? Is this the stumper?
It's working.
Oh, it is working? Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Providing support for equal opportunity.
Okay, excellent.
More
More equal distribution of responsibilities and benefits, access to ad resources regardless of industry. Yeah, I mean, that just seems to be something that has been a problem since we changed the rules around in 2016, is that cannabis is still not an ag commodity. And so all of the services that are offered to other ag commodities are, simply not available to cannabis producers. Oh, wow, interesting, AI, okay. Yeah, so equal opportunity, justice, righting historical harms, and agricultural parity. Okay, I think that's really excellent. Let's go to our next slide and my last little speaking point here. So these are going to be kind of our guiding questions for today. What is equity? How does it function and operate in your specific locale? How does it connect to environmental stewardship? If we bring more people into the legal industry, into compliance, are we guaranteed to get greater environmental stewardship? Is there a connection there? And lastly, what kind of policies really work and how we could affect change of those policies to make sure that this system that's, again, only 10 years old can truly be equitable moving forward. Okay, and with that, I'll turn it over to you guys. Broadly, what does equity mean to you in your system, in your jurisdiction? And feel free to kind of reintroduce yourself and tell a bit about your life. And yeah.
Sure. Are our slides going to be?
Not yet.
Correlate?
We're going to do slides. This is just a bit about yourself moment. So
Okay.
Ideally, if you could kind of reintroduce yourself, your title, your affiliation. How do you define equity broadly, and then how does that fit into your system, to where you work, and to Hayford?
Okay, my slide just went with that, so I didn't realize. Okay. Dana Hauser from Hayfork, Trinity County. Equity, for me, it's there's the state qualifier, and then GoBiz has its requirements for each county to choose from, and then it's like not our county and Trinity County's equity program is a mirror image of the state's qualifiers. That's my individual set. Like, that's the parameters in which I'm licensed through. But what I think about it personally is a broader question. And I think I'll just let it play down for a bit.
Okay, quick question for you. Are you an equity operator in Hayfork?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah. So I qualify at the state and the county for my location.
Do you mind sharing what were the qualifications for equity applicants in
It's
Trinity?
the same. It's the same qualifications that the state set. So it's low income, a previous conviction, or living within a designated area for 5 years in a certain amount of time. So I qualify in that I lived in a certain area for 5 years before 2016, like before the parameter of the time.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So.
That's perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Alan, would you tell us a bit about yourself and your area?
So I'm from I work in Orville, which is in Butte County, which is very conservative. I think they call people from Orange County libtards. Anyway, we kind of have a reverse thing going there. That was one of those not in this county, no way counties. So we didn't have any grounds to get on equal terms with anyone. So there was no program to promote equitable ownership and employment opportunities in the cannabis industry or efforts to decrease disparities in marginalized communities, which is what it means to me. So in my opinion, the local officials just couldn't care less about that. So we, as a tribe, had to carve our own way. We didn't have an equity program. We can't get licensed through the California cannabis program, so we were locked out. So we used our sovereignty, and I can get into more of that later, and started tribal cannabis in the Central Valley. We've shared, our regulations are the key. We've shared our regulations with some neighboring tribes. A lot of people say, why are you doing that? You're the only one in Butte County. You know, so, but for us, it was if for tribal cannabis to survive, it had to be done right. A few tribes went out rogue and didn't do it right, partnering with tobacco companies, things like that. So we wanted to avoid that, and regulations were key, and letting our other tribes also use our regulations to open was one way for us to level the playing field. And then the counties followed our lead. Now there's a dispensary in Chico and a couple in Marysville. But so we had to carve our own way. We didn't have an equity program.
Excellent, thank you. Peng?
Hey everyone, Peng here again. I'm affiliated with the UC Berkeley Cannabis Research Center, and I'm a community researcher, project manager for the Hmong-Ugarian Diasporas Research Project, which I'll detail a bit more in my slides here. But my work is at the intersection of cultural heritage research and natural and built environments. And so I was also just looking at general definitions of equity, and I think kind of what are fundamental pieces that also relate to my work and my research as well. And so that is, and I'll read to you, equity recognizes that each person has different circumstances or different groups of people, and it also works towards allocating resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. Again, happy to expand when we get to our slides a bit more. But also just wanted to give Katie a great shout out to just laying out the foundations for this panel with your research too.
All right, thank you, Peng.
Thank you everybody for having me. Again, I'm Kason Grady, engineer with the North Coast Water Board. The Water Boards is a state agency. It's part of the California Environmental Protection Agency, and we have regulatory, permitting, and administrative enforcement responsibilities in this industry. I've been working regulating cannabis since about 2014, 2015, when we first adopted a regional order, and that has been taken statewide. But the water boards broadly, both at a statewide level and at a regional level, have established a commitment towards racial equity. In particular, we're part of the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, and a definition that we share is that equity is achieved when race can no longer be a predictor of life outcomes, and when outcomes for all groups are improved. To advance equity at the water boards in 2003, at least regionally, I think prior to that statewide, the board adopted a resolution acknowledging the government's role in the appropriation of native lands, the government's role in contributing to racialized disparities, as well as our responsibility to try to improve equitable outcomes. In 2025, we adopted an action plan where we can take kind of the lofty goals and ideals of our resolution and try to make it actionable in our day-to-day work. We have kind of three primary elements in our racial equity action plan component, which is internal, external, and process-based. Internal, trying to develop and build capacity amongst our staff to be able to have equity-based conversations while at the same time minimizing harm in having those conversations, when oftentimes we may not represent the diversity of the communities that we represent. We may have indoctrinated fragility or patriarchy, and we have to be sensitive in endeavoring to have those conversations so we don't cause those workplace harms that were talked about in the prior conversation. But then we also need to build lasting and trusting relationships and partnerships with tribes as well as BIPOC communities. And so there's this external engagement component to our work. And then lastly is incorporating equity into our permits, our enforcement, planning, and policies. And it's just a couple examples of, to support language justice. We have an Office of Public Engagement, Equity, and Tribal Affairs, where we provide language services, interpretation, and translation to really anybody who needs it. And it's a way of providing that sort of disproportionate support to communities that need it. And those people that otherwise may not understand the laws and regulations and the rules or effectively how to steward the environment in their cannabis cultivation, by providing language access is a way to really get that environmental outcome that wouldn't have been there without the education and engagement and communication necessary to achieve that. That's, I think, in high-level racial equity, but I think there's other aspects to the equity conversation in this industry, which is like market economic equity. Since Prop 64 got established, now we have a legal system that's been going on for over 10 years now, and there's still widespread unlicensed cultivation that occurs, and those unlicensed growers are gaining economic advantages over licensees who are trying to do the right thing and have to pay permit fees, hire consultants, develop plans, do implementation of water quality protection measures on their properties, and do site restoration. And so to address the sort of market equity component, the water boards as well as other agencies have to a large degree deprioritized enforcement and compliance assessment on licensed sites. And we spend a disproportionate amount of our resources on enforcing the laws and the rules and regulations on unlicensed sites to help promote a level playing field and kind of market equity. Just this last week, and I'll try to hurry it up.
No worries. Yeah.
Just this last week, our board adopted two enforcement actions, $50,000 penalties against unlicensed sites for non-compliance with our cleanup and abatement orders. One of the things, this is another layer to that whole process that the water boards does to promote equity, is in addition to what I just talked about, we also prioritize cleanup over penalties. So to protect water quality, our primary interest is water quality protection. It's to get the on-the-ground work done so that we, avoid the problems in the future. We kind of eliminate the discharges that are occurring and We protect the environment as our number one. And so we start off with a progressive process where we really try to engage with people and we try to get the cleanup done. And it's really only when people ignore us, decline to participate, refuse to do the cleanups, that we proceed to these penalties. And let's see if there's a last thing. Oh, just the last thing is in regards to our mission. So I spoke to racial equity, market equity, kind of economics, and then the last one is just environmental equity. And to a large degree, equity is providing disproportionate support to people that are underrepresented, under-resourced. Well, the environment itself cannot advocate for itself. Fish populations, fish and wildlife cannot advocate for themselves. And so our agency does have a mission to protect water quality for all people, for future generations, and also for the intrinsic value, not just the human-derived value, but the intrinsic value of species diversity, ecology, and the water quality that is produced and necessary for those thriving ecosystems. So with that, I'll pass it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Kason.
That was great. Thanks, Kason. So I'm Laura Herrera, and in my day-to-day, I'm a financial analyst overseeing a portfolio of 70-plus federal state grants, around $18 million in the Oakland Community College system. So to me, equity is a thoughtful consideration for sustainability and harm reduction, which is a term that you're going to hear brought up more frequently. In Oakland, where I've lived for about 16 years, there's a lot of duality in the cannabis programs. The Bay has always been pro-cannabis, but even in Prop 219 days, there were mostly white medical business owners, while the rates of arrests for cannabis were disproportionately black residents. So in 2022, when I got to see some of the cannabis business tax data from the city, there was about 100 equity businesses and slightly more general businesses, but the difference in revenues was 30 million to 300 million. So equity businesses exist and they're making money, but not as much as the general businesses. And as a subcontractor for the equity program, I saw how equity loans and grants both helped and harmed small business owners. Oakland was an early adopter in the Cannabis Equity Act, and in 2018 developed a loan program before the state started giving out grants. So unfortunately, enough program participants defaulted on their loans and were being threatened to send to collections. So the Oakland City Council in 2023 eventually authorized a loan to grant conversion, allowing equity permit recipients to convert their unpaid city business loans into grants. And the goal of that was to alleviate the debt burdens and enhance the financial sustainability for the equity applicants who were in the program by definition as being on the margins, impacted by the war on drugs, and from a lower socioeconomic starting point.
That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you, panelists. Could we go back a couple slides to my equity jurisdiction slides? A couple more, two more. To Laura's last point, thank you very much, everybody, for your answers, and we'll go to the next section in just a moment. Sorry, one more forward. Thank you. Yeah, I neglected to mention that since 2019, since the state started doing these equity grant programs for local jurisdictions, there's been about $140 million taken out of the cannabis tax fund from the general fund into this program that's benefited about 1,400 individuals, which comes out to about $100,000 per individual if the money went directly to the cultivators, right? Unfortunately, these programs, to administer them, counties take a significant amount of the funds that they get from this program to basically run the program within the county. The average cannabis operator gets around $10,000 out of these programs, not 10 to 50, but somewhere in there, not the 100,000. So again, it's one way that the state has thought about implementing equity. But really, when you talk to like the California Department of Tax, for instance, they see this as like a way to bring in tax revenue to the state. not necessarily as a way to increase equity along the lines of what we were just talking about, or as a way to increase environmental stewardship. It's a way to increase tax revenue, which is then slotted to go to other programs. But anyway, it's sort of a circuitous system. Okay, we can jump back ahead to the slide we were at. Thank you. One more. Here we go. Okay. So for this next part, we're going to jump into some slides that our panelists have prepared. And I'll just talk for one more moment. And we're doing great on time, everyone. Thank you. So yeah, it's nice to get a sense of what's going on in your communities. Can we load up the other slides, please? The yellow slides? Thank you. And now I want to talk about kind of the next step and think about think about environmental stewardship and how these things connect, these ideas of keeping people in the regulated system and allowing more people into the regulated system. How can that increase environmental stewardship? I wasn't going to talk too much about my own journey, but I might mention a bit that this is my farm on the lower right-hand corner here back in, I think, 2016 or 17, and I was still doing smart pots, and I was growing about 100 plants, and I did it all pretty much myself with a couple people, and I would say, very much interested in environmental stewardship. I used organic products, I was careful about my water and my wastewater, and I was able to kind of maintain a very small family farm and make a living. This is my last year, 2019, where I went to Sea of Green, or Screen of Green, really. I use Scrog. And my yields went way up, and I had to use way more water, and I had to use way more newts, and I had to use more fertilizer, and I had to worry more about pests. And then that year, when things started to change, I looked at trying to get permitted in Mendocino County. That was kind of rough. And also I looked at my property where, I had a spring that was 80 years old that had been a hunting cabin. It was great-grandfathered in, but it was really close to the Eel River. It was only about 80 feet up off the river. They probably would have said it was hydrologically connected. I wasn't going to be able to use that water source. I started bringing in big trucks. I couldn't get the trucks up my driveway to see if I could drill a well higher up. I started thinking about, I could rent a D9 and just take out this whole hill so I can get the trucks up here. And it was like, wait a second, how is this helping me? I'm hurting the environment to continue operating, and there's no guarantee that I'll get a permit. Phase 1 had closed in Mendocino County. Anyway, I think the idea of stewardship comes at multiple levels, right? There's this idea, we talked about this a lot in our panel conversations. I think this was something that was really interesting that came out of those conversations. There's sort of like this lofty ideal of stewardship, where we're not just taking care of our properties, we're making them better, we're creating gray water systems, we're all doing like biodynamic farming, we're growing all our own food. It's not just about meeting regulation, it's about really truly stewarding the land. That's the ideal. The next step down from that, perhaps, is regulatory stewardship, right? Where you're like, well, what do they need from me? What are the laws? How much water do I have to, what do I have to do in order to stay compliant with regulators, like what Kasim was talking about? And that's important, but not necessarily the same as that top tier ideal. And then you get, as business owners, you get these kind of other forms of stewardship, where it's like, well, maybe I could make my factory greener. I could reduce my bottom line as a business owner to put some solar panels on my roof. Or instead of having 3 factories that I have to drive between, I could have one centralized one and put less trucks on the road. So that helps our environment, but those decisions are predicated more on the bottom line and increasing your revenue. And then lastly, we talked about kind of going to the consumer and hoping that consumers will care about stewardship, and they'll see that your product is either manufactured you're sun-grown, or that you're doing something in your production that is caring for the environment. And I think what we've seen in the years since shops have opened up is consumers don't care as much about that as we would hope that they would. Like a lot of consumers in other markets, they care about the bottom line. So if they can get a cheaper pre-roll, they often will, regardless of the methodology used in producing that cannabis. So I had a thing written here and I didn't read any of it, but I think I covered most of it. Yeah. But just like equity, the motivations of how people go about environmental stewardship are unique and nuanced, and often relate to their geography and to their opportunities. So I want to go back to our panelists, and this time take some more time. We have some slides to help you through. Please tell us more about how equity in your area relates to environmental stewardship and how we might broaden environmental stewardship through increased equity. And yeah, I think that's it for me. Let's go back to, this time we'll have to go a bit out of order. So could we go to the next slide, please, Celeste? Peng, it appears that you're first, yeah. So we're gonna go by the order of the slides, not at the order of the table. And yeah, take it away, thank you.
Yeah, more than happy to. Thanks, Seth, for setting us up here. So I'm a community researcher and project manager again for this project, which its full title is displayed in the screen that you're looking at. And outside of this role too, I also serve as the director for the Cultural Heritage Center in Fresno's Chinatown. And so this is one of the cool projects that I get to work on. And an abbreviated version of this project, which I referenced earlier too, is we call it the Hungarian Diasporas Project. So we don't say the whole spiel and get people confused as well. But nonetheless, if we want to go to the next slide.
Yeah. Thank you, Celeste.
Yeah, this project largely, one, it's funded by the Department of Cannabis Control and is a 3-year project. We are about wrapping up field work and moving on to kind of organizing our data, coding, and next steps here. But nonetheless, we wanted to understand the role of Hmong cannabis farmers, but also agrarian histories, where there might be cultural, economic influences, to understand farm structures, whether that's through gardens, vegetable farms, mixed vegetable farms, specialty crops, or cannabis, and to also understand other elements of like lived experiences across kind of access to resources and the medical use of cannabis as well. And so what you see behind me, and like I said, I didn't anticipate kind of 180 in here, but nonetheless,
nice.
So what you're seeing is some of the study sites for this project, which includes these states outlined, Washington State, California State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, which is the region, the Midwest there has the highest Hmong population density, and also includes interviews from states like North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, and then California, of course. And so just wanted to kind of outline the project area or study areas to kind of situate, this project's approach in using research as a tool, and hopefully using research or approaching research in an equitable direction. And next slide, please. An example of that, what you see here is a semi-product of a life history approach or methodology to this qualitative project. And it's to fully understand the life of an individual, right? And so you see the timeline, and it's to understand in the context of their potential role in cannabis cultivation, or just in like agrarian livelihoods, right? What were important and major events in their lives, and this helps us piece together maybe small bits and pieces that can help us understand potential agrarian migrations, how they understand and work with land, water, resources. And then we have this, but also other methodologies for this Hmong Agrarian Diasporas project that we employ, including semi-structured interviews, as well as participant observation. And so we talk with Hmong farmers, gardeners, stakeholders, allies, you name it, to better understand Hmong Agrarian Diasporas, but also these different roles, again, of like farm structure, best practices, and the interface with policy, with resources, with law enforcement, etc. And we can go to the next slide as well. And this includes during our kind of field work as well, where we can and where we are allowed to with research participants, also documenting and understanding how cannabis is cultivated. And in this sense, and what's pictured here is in a garden and next to other plants, vegetables, including traditional and medicinal home herbs. And yeah, I think just wanted to give you all a good sense of kind of our approaches, qualitative approaches to understanding Hmong-Ogurian diasporas. And part of this work, again, and I want to emphasize, right, is when we want to understand individual kind of livelihoods in the economy and in society, right? What does it mean to employ qualitative research tools like this on the ground, and to learn from individuals? And with that, we've at this point are over 150 interviews, and we'll work towards learning kind of what are some trends and patterns, what are some gaps, and how we can use this project and the data that we've collected from the lived stories and experiences of these individuals to inform policy, to inform these gaps, and what we can do as researchers, as community members, as cannabis enthusiasts and activists, advocates and activists, to just do better, right, for environmental sustainability, but also towards equity. And next slide. And the last piece I'll just share here, since we're talking about equity and also the cannabis industry. End of last year, earlier this year, what you see at the top is a headline with the Asian Law Caucus. It reads, Siskiyou County settles claims over race-based traffic stops, agrees to major reform. And this is a partial settlement that essentially, and I included keywords here too. That was also included in the article, but this case basically set the tone to understand Asian American experiences living in Siskiyou County and their interactions with law enforcement and officials from the county, right? And in this partial settlement, it was a huge win for Asian American communities, and including Hmong communities. And so this has been kind of the past maybe definitely 5+ years, maybe 10 years now, a huge issue, right? Which is even, just belonging, feeling like you belong in a space, let alone being able to thrive economically or to farm in a certain space. And so I'll leave it at this, and just to really make a statement to say that with federal movements, with the retraction of keywords like DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, like that, the movement alone the last year has set us back 10+ years already. And so wanting to really outline that to do equitable and progressive work, I think this is a prime time to, do as much advocacy and collaboration as possible. And yeah, this is the final slide of my presentation, but just a quote from some residents in Siskiyou County around access to water, which I think most folks might be familiar with the cultural, natural resources, farming intentions in Siskiyou County as well. And so I'll leave it at that. Cool. So.
Thank you, Peng. That suit was brought, that was the ACLU that brought the
Yes,
suit against the county.
ACLU was the one that brought the lawsuit.
That's interesting. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to our next slide. And who's next? This is a bit of excitement. All right, it's Dana. Okay,
Yeah.
welcome. All right, great. Let's.
Can you show it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm perfect. That's fine. Okay, yeah, so I'm from Trinity County, and my equity program is tied directly, it mirrors the state's qualifiers. We were later to the game because in order for a county to be qualified for the equity program, you had to have cultivating, distribution, and retail. It took us a while to get our retail ordinance up and going, and by the time that happened, very shortly after that, the state was no longer issuing actual fee waiver relief. They just offered deferrals. And then they picked and chose, and it wasn't consistent who got the actual fee relief when there was still money it just was luck of the draw, and whoever was handling your application at the state equity level, your application at the level of the state. So by the time I applied for equity, myself personally, I never qualified for actual fee relief with the DCC. The deferral is just postponing your payment for 6 months, which is still not helpful. And how Trinity County implements their equity program is fee waivers. So you get one fee waiver, because some people have multiple licenses, such as myself. So I get to waive the fees of one of my licenses. And then we have a program to produce an environmental program, or sorry, I said environmental, educational series. And that's in the works, which I also help with. But so as a cultivator, as a license holder, I'm also going to be a retailer. I'm going to be opening my retail in May is my goal. And in Hayfork, it's frustrating as being, like, I know the intentions of equity are great and grand, but the implementation is not that great nor grand in my individual circumstance of being in my location in Trinity County. I know other counties had were able to get more funds for, water storage and bigger grants. When you said what was that, $100,000?
140 million.
But per person, what was it? What did that break down to be?
If it went directly to people, it would be about 100,000 per person.
Okay, so I've received a deferment of 6 months, which is nothing. It's just a pay later, and $5,000 a year for my outdoor cultivation license. And then one time I used it for my indoor cultivation license, which was $2,000 like a year. So I would love to get the other, 90 plus, just saying. Or the opportunity to do some improvement, not that that has to go into my direct account, that then would be a problem because of no banking. But anyway, so it would be really great if there was administrative alignment with what equity means throughout the state, reconciling the definitions from the DCC to GoBiz and the state agencies, such as, you're bringing up the water board racial equity intention, which is great, but I'm not even sure if that definition is legal in the state, and I think would likely be challenged. So I'm like really curious what that means on the ground, and what that means on the ground for me as a cultivator. If I present white, I don't think that means anything for me, but I've been a legacy cultivator since middle school, I think, kind of, sort of, when I popped my first seed. I went to Humboldt State. We can't really share our whole histories, but I'll tell you, it's a plant. It's a plant that connects people with themselves and with nature and with community. And it has been weaponized, and many people have had to suffer for connecting with themselves in a way that the plant has helped them access. And the fact that it's overregulated to the point where we're like running farmers off their land in smart pots to like commercially cultivating at a level that is so environmentally detrimental, it's like a joke. And then blaming the cultivators to not having access to market because it's all rigged, and then the consumer is so misinformed that they don't even know how to access a quality product is mind-numbing. And anyway, so market access, direct-to-consumer sales. Yeah. As a craft cultivator, not having the ability to really, I'm smart enough to navigate the market, but I'm smart enough to realize it's not worth navigating the market because it's bullshit. We can go into that if it's the time. Okay.
Let's go.
It's
yeah.
the time. Okay. So I'll wait on the small business resources. But basically, we can go, so we can go to the picture that I stole off of the web. Sorry for not crediting whomever, it's the internet. Reality, we are in the hole. We're the little one in the underground behind the fence. What equality is just like giving people the same thing. It doesn't actually get you equal. And then equity is a correction to the disproportion reality, basically. That's what equity is, a correction to the disproportion reality. In all contexts, in my take. So what equity means to a craft cultivator is access to market. If you want to talk about environmental stewardship, small cultivation, like one of the only, not the only, but one of, and I am most familiar with because I am a Trinity County license holder and advocate, we have a craft cultivation ordinance. All of our licenses of 530 approved through our CEQA are all but 15 are 10,000 square foot max. They can be smaller, but there's only 15 allowed to be 15 single acres allowed. Not our 500 out of our 530 licenses, they're not all. None of the CCLs have been full. We're around 300 plus, 320 something plus issued, and that fluctuates. And but we're around 300 CCLs issued. No more. I think there's 3 or 4 of the acres that are approved, but I don't even know that all of the acres are being optimized, like to even full acres. So most of our licenses are 10,000 square feet. It's a craft ordinance. We don't have a craft access to market. We don't have, that's a local level. That the state, it's a longer conversation that I don't even want to get into, but I know we're here. So we don't have much distribution and very limited manufacturing, and it's what our product has to do is drive out of the county, not really to the coast because that doesn't really work. It could and it does, but it doesn't really. It mostly drives down to LA on the wholesale market, which then hits the market through different brands at wholesale, not cultivator brands. And then if it's a craft brand, then it has to drive from wherever the distributor is back up the state, wherever it's going to go to retail. It's a nightmare. We need direct-to-consumer sales to keep the small cultivators in a position where they can survive and run their businesses. Naturally, craft cultivators are better land stewards than overly produced commercial farmers. We've been doing it for decades. We want to continue to do it. Unfortunately, the majority of the legacy cultivators are no longer in the industry because of the way things have turned. And my efforts in Hayfork and Trinity County as a whole are through the Hayfork Chamber of Commerce is to develop a pull for people to come to our beautiful valley and communities. And at the top is QR code. If you scan that, that's visithayfork.org, the Hayfork Chamber of Commerce's website that's designed to promote cannabis tourism in Trinity County. Okay, thank you. And I'm good. I'll wrap it up. So the goal is to help fix this market that's a disaster, and not try to play at their table, but to create our own table, and to, instead of having people come up and exploit our communities and lowball and give people wholesale criminal prices, in my opinion. The idea is to keep value in our communities and have people come and visit and farm tour and be able to access true craft cannabis on the legal market in Trinity County legally. And come, stay, spread the dollar around, and respect our communities and leave the value there. So that's the goal with cannabis tourism through the Hayfork Chamber of Commerce. We were just featured, our community in Trinity County was just featured in High Times. That's the second QR code if you want to scan that. That's pretty cool. And the small farm struggle is real. Protecting ecosystems begins with protecting the small craft farm. By developing a robust craft to consumer market, the state secures the most cost-effective environmental protective strategy network of stable, compliant land stewards in the craft cannabis.
I like this slide.
Yeah. Yes.
Dana, are you in High Times? Is there a picture of you in there?
I don't believe there's a picture of me, but it's my tiny little farm.
Okay.
It's my tiny little 10,000. Well, like, it's tiny because I planted late. I don't know if anyone's heard about how life can get really complicated, but I've got a whole story about it. I planted teens. My plants are like this big, but it was my first, I've had an outdoor license for years, securing the land to secure the license, but my life never was in the position to actually do it. The last year I got it started, and I'm there, and it happened, and then the future is bright, and I am committed. Craft to consumer is the only way, and it's possible to educate the consumer. It's possible to provide something that they want that they don't even understand, because the system is, I hate even saying the system is rigged, but the system is rigged. Retail in California is a whole nother conversation, and I can't wait for that panel.
Yeah, good one. Thank you, Dana. Okay, who's next? Would you mind? Thank you. And this is Alan, this is you. And I started to do this to you guys. We have 3 panelists left, about 20 minutes, about 7 minutes each. Okay. Thank you.
Problem.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I mentioned, we had to plow our own way. We didn't have to deal with prejudice or equity. There was no industry. So I was the tribe's cannabis commissioner and went to several tribes and other states. And the best model I found for the legal but not in my backyard cannabis industry, Native American lands are ideal. So the model we modeled after was the Santa Isabel tribe in San Diego. Their industry is up on a plateau with basically one way in and one way out. They got massive greenhouses up there, and they just use state-of-the-art technology. They had this enclosed system for their clones and seedlings, and they were saying it had like a 90%, over 90% water recycling. I mean, even drawing it out of the air, it was a closed system. It was just amazing. Solar. So we really liked their environmental stewardship. So as we got our regulations, we actually stole the people that wrote their regulations. And as we got that going, we, let's see. So there was a big problem. We've heard about booby traps and stuff with row growing, clearing lands on public lands, and chemical fertilizers and pesticides. That was a big problem in Butte County. So when we adopted our ordinances, we only can buy from tribes that practice environmental stewardship and conservation. And this has reduced these rogue dump sites in the area. We opened the first cannabis dispensary in Butte County, and after just a few years, we're more than doubling its size. The need is there. I think the local officials just assumed this was all for stoners. No, our first patient was a elderly senior lady that was looking for topicals. So the need's there. The market wasn't there. Again, did I mention it was a conservative county? So we're currently seeking to partner with hemp processors in South Dakota.
Wow.
We're all aware of the obscene amount of waste. You go into a dispensary here, you get a cart that big that's in a box that big, or a non-recyclable placard that big. We're looking to partner with a hemp processing company and make biodegradable cannabis packaging.
Wow.
So we'd like to introduce that. So that's what we'd like to do for the environment, and that's our model.
Partner with metric tags too?
Yeah.
Metric tags. Yeah.
Biodegradable metric tags would be great.
Oh yeah, that would be great. So we have about 650 acres. We're not growing yet. Again, as I mentioned, it's a conservative county. Only rogue grows, but those are greatly reduced because now most of the people are coming and buying it legitimately instead of getting it from some guy tearing up the environment.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. My research at Berkeley, we talked to a lot of tribes around the state, and some of them were, anti-cannabis. I know, like, there was Operation Yurok up here with Yurok and Karuk tribes trying to remove cannabis off tribal lands. And we talked to a lot of other tribes that were interested in starting cannabis operations for financial development, and we're facing a lot of obstacles. There wasn't really a system that the state provided to allow tribes into this market and retain their tribal sovereignty to grow and produce their own rules in a way that's, in keeping with their own tribe's values. So I applaud you and your tribe for going for it, and I think there's actually a pretty robust secondary regulated market of tribal operations throughout the state. Anyway.
It has grown since we started a few years back.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you. All right, let's head up to our next slide. And where are we at? Okay, Kason, you're up. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Kason with the water boards back, give you a regulatory perspective. I've included a map here. And I'll first just explain it, and then it'll initiate a conversation. So looking at the map, right? So it's a zoomed in area of Emerald Triangle, Southern Humboldt, Southern Trinity, and Northern Mendo. And in blue, we have tribal boundaries.
Is that Round Valley tribe?
Yeah, mostly. There's a couple others. Anyway, yes.
Sorry to interrupt, yeah.
And so then we have the background layer are like these hash marks, which is effectively census data showing economics. So this entire area is hashed in one way or another in terms of being economically disadvantaged. Then you have these hexagons. They're approximately 2 square mile areas, and if there's any licensed cultivation within that area, it's green. I didn't get into the analysis of like how much illegal's in there versus legal. It's like if there's any licensed in there, it's green. And the idea being to show that if there's potential cannabis outside of those areas, then you can have this visual of, okay, there's the potential unlicensed cultivation occurring in areas where there's not licensed cultivation occurring, but nearby. And so the light pink is 1/4 acre to 1 acre within that area, and then the other one is 1 to 5 acres within that area. And again, this is potential cannabis. It has not been ground truth field verified, but from 2024, it goes to show this high-level sort of intersection between unlicensed cannabis cultivation, licensed cultivation, economically disadvantaged communities. This is mostly in, say, the Eel River watershed, so impaired watersheds for sediment and temperature. You have the neighboring licensed sites and tribal lands. You have the intersection of racial, market, economic, and environmental equity kind of all in one map. And I just thought it was relevant to kind of display that, to show that, you know, this is real, it's happening, it's ongoing. Beyond that, I thought I would show like kind of a real world, tangible example of what I would consider a success story. We have, this is a licensed site, and we have numerous examples of licensed sites in this category. We have also numerous examples of unlicensed sites. But in this instance, the upper left-hand corner image shows kind of a pre-development condition with some polygons showing a stream and wetland areas on the property that had then been modified into a lined pond with kind of a plastic liner with some culverts and a spillway, and cultivation near sensitive habitats. And our staff worked with the enrollee to restore the site, to effectively remove the pond, restore the wetlands and the stream, and you can see on the right-hand side of the photo kind of the restored site condition. Like I said, we have numerous examples of working with enrollees to restore sites, to protect water quality, while at the same time empowering them to maintain their permits, keep their business, and do the right thing. And so these are examples of licensed growers. We, in some ways may have already been stewards, and in other ways, like working with regulators to learn some best practices to protect the environment and protect water quality. I would just go on to say that there are also numerous sites like this that can be unlicensed that we work with both through enforcement but also compliance assistance to get them to restore their sites. And at the water boards, we've created guidance materials on how people can protect water quality on their sites. We've included that in our policy and in the regulations, but we've also contracted with different organizations to develop guidance material in multiple languages for best management practices, so that we do that education and outreach to empower people to do the right thing. We've been at this for over 10 years, and we've done countless road shows and community meetings, and really done what we can. And we still provide language services, education, technical assistance to people so that they can restore their sites and truly be stewards of water quality. Thank you.
Thank you, Kason. Next slide, please. Kason, I'm glad you touched on education. We're going to end with Laura Herrera, who's going to talk to us about just that and some other topics.
So I included a little QR code in the corner in case you want to click on the live links that I've included. So as I mentioned, for the last 16 years, I've been in the East Bay, but I originally hail from the Southwest. I'm from El Paso, Texas, which borders Sunland Park, New Mexico, and Juarez, Chihuahua. All three of those cities have drastically different cannabis laws. You can look more into that if you want to click on those. So I'm going to loop back to what does equity mean when you're talking about environmental stewardship. So equity is a thoughtful consideration for sustainability. Also, a long-term ROI is the translation there. And harm reduction can be translated to risk mitigation, although that intention is kind of different, right? Harm reduction is trying to preserve the ecosystem, preserve a community, while risk mitigation is trying to avoid legal responsibility. So for regulators and public administrators, I'd like you to think about, instead of reacting to public policy, thinking about how to remodel systems in the public interest, which is what the Water Board has tried to do, is how can we enforce these laws, but in a way that reduces harm. And so when we think about what kind of specific policies that we need to increase both equity and environmental stewardship, I'd like you to think in an ecosystemic perspective, with policies that braid together systems and stakeholders at both the local and the state level. And very specifically, if we want to give small business support, I think we should offer tax forgiveness or administrative support and technical assistance around taxes. It's a very specific action item there. In my area of interest, and something I've been researching since 2019, is cannabis apprenticeship. So what I want to propose is a stronger investment in cannabis cultivation apprenticeship, because I think cannabis education can stabilize the market and train the next generation of stewards of the environment. So interdisciplinary collaboration across sectors with that focus on equity is the future of cannabis studies, which Katie just gave us an excellent presentation of earlier.
Truly.
Oh, and you can see at the top, these sort of tabs is what we're going to talk about next. So we focus on education, and my research question was, what is the existing landscape of cannabis education, and how could education improve environmental stewardship? I convened a working group of cannabis educators, and we have these 3 case studies as some examples of cannabis studies across California. And the first case study is Mount San Antonio College. We have Professor William Dolphin here with us, who will be presenting later on, and has done a lot of work on this campus. So at Mount San Antonio College in SoCal, in the Natural Sciences Division, Department of Horticulture, they have an Associate of Science degree in Cannabis Operations and a certificate program with Cannabis Level 1 and 2. And he shared with me that they just got their approval to grow hemp on campus. So that is a program that, through the work of faculty, dedicated faculty, they've been able to build this program and do what I don't think anybody else is doing yet, is growing hemp on a college campus. So the second case study is San Francisco City College. In their Social Sciences Division, Department of Behavioral Science, they have an Associate Arts degree in Cannabis Studies. So as we look at the third case study, which also files in the Social Science Division, Department of Sociology here at Cal Poly Humboldt, you can see how we're leaning more towards social sciences, or natural sciences, but there is also social sciences picking up cannabis careers, cannabis education studies. So here at Cal Poly Humboldt, they have the Bachelor's Arts degree in Cannabis Studies, and I believe a combined bachelor and master's pathway. So in these 3 case studies, you can see the diversity of training levels and resources that students could access to then maybe go to graduate studies, which would be a dream for a lot of people here. Being able to work with the Berkeley Cannabis Research Center has been amazing, to have the resources that the DCC provides to further investigate the things that we're most interested in. So a few of the working group recommendations were to streamline cannabis course numbering so that across the California higher education systems, you could get credit for these cannabis classes if you wanted to transfer. Also, standardizing those level 1 and level 2 courses for cannabis education would also help to make this more of a statewide system. Oh, and these are live links if you wanted to dive into each of these colleges' programs. So what I'm excited to present to you today is a map that I've made with the institutional roles and structure for a state certified apprenticeship program. Right now we are at level 1, if not before level 1, we're at 0.5. But in my conversations, dialogue, and years of research, this is the starting point. We have a working group, we have local education agencies that are interested. I've also spoken to a apprenticeship expert, a group called Launch, that started in the Inland Empire, but at the college that I work at now, we've worked with them to develop a cybersecurity apprenticeship program, and an early childhood development apprenticeship program. So they recommended a risk assessment, strategic plan, scope of work, define the college partners, and this is where it gets hard, at least 3 employers that could commit to participating, and then starting a union trust where the employers would pay into the trust and that would fund the program moving forward. Also interesting is that they recommended we start with horticulture, baseline ag or hort positions that could be augmented for cannabis. And step 2, which is kind of the easy part, is convening the subject matter experts, convening the industry experts, because we all love to talk about this plant. That's probably the easiest part. And then step 3 is once the local education agencies have been identified, they're eventually going to have to be audited by the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. So the nonprofit partner can lead those audits on behalf of the sponsor. So those are kind of the 3 infrastructure steps that we have to put together. And the union trust, which might work better with a philanthropic partner, like the California Community Colleges Foundation, or one of the foundations that we have here today, could maybe jumpstart this process. So when we actually get to deciding what is the cultivation apprenticeship program curriculum, Launch recommended that we build the standards for horticulture, so it's not exclusive to cannabis. And we would start with competencies aligned with cannabis for entry-level to mid-tier positions. So the first year, well, after the planning stage, the first year would be to plan and submit those standards to the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, which falls under the Department of Industrial Relations. And then year 2, upon the approved standards, then the implementation would start. And then we'd go into workforce training. So an issue here is that the labor market index, which is managed by the EDD, the Employment Development Division, Department, it's tricky because we don't know where federal legalization is in terms of 1 year, 2 years, etc. So that is another tricky part. Also, our market is not stable. The California cannabis market is not stable. So it would be hard to get employers that would have to be vetted, have a strong license, and committed to at least 2 years to the program. And the field is still emerging, so this is another challenge. The occupational codes are still undetermined, and they're dependent on the market label, the labor market information, which I don't think EDD is collecting LMI data on cannabis yet. But that's crucial for tracking the job growth and the wages. So where the California community college system fits in perfectly is that they are the ideal place to host apprenticeship programs. And as you saw in the case studies, there's already several colleges that provide certificates, 2-year degrees, and pathways to 4-year programs. The teachers will have to be part of a local education agency, but with the industry committee is where we can bring in legacy experts, growers who have worked for larger companies and were not treated fairly, fired as soon as they shared their knowledge with the company. So that's where we could bring the subject matter experts, legacy growers, and preserve their knowledge.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay.
We're almost wrapped up with time. We were told to finish promptly at noon because the president of the university is going to come and speak with us soon. But we have just been given about 5 more minutes to finish up and do our Q&A. But do you have any more? That was well done.
Yeah, almost wrapped up. And if you wanted more details and those links, you can see all of our slides. We're happy to share them with you. And could click on that QR code.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I think Laura, I'm happy we ended on education, especially with the venue that we're at here. And I think it's just so important to understand that we kind of are lacking in educating this next generation. If you are interested in viticulture, you can do countless programs throughout the state about learning how to grow grapes, be a vineyard manager, pest reduction on vineyards. We don't have those programs yet for cannabis, and I really have to commend Cal Poly Humboldt for the program that they're offering these students to kind of bring them into the next generation of the cannabis industry that hopefully can be more equitable. So in our last couple minutes that we've been granted excess time for, oh, perfect, thank you, people are already jumping in. I would love to know, and we were going to have a moment to ask the panel too, but we don't. So if you panelists wouldn't mind, you could also use this, or happy to share. But what do you see as something that's necessary to change? What is something specifically in regards to equity and environmental stewardship? What are policies that need to change or that need to exist that don't exist now? And I would love your input here. So we have decriminalization. People mentioned like the prison industrial pipeline. Only a couple of jurisdictions have actually changed people's conviction rates and actually let people out of prison or what's the word? Taken away their criminal expunged. Thank you. Yeah, clemency, expungement. Exactly. Put cannabis cultivation under the Department of Ag. Direct to consumer sales. I heard a bit about that today. Yeah. So thank you. These are great ideas. And then lastly, because we're out of time, I wasn't sure how we were going to handle this, but let's go to our last slide. How to put like, okay. We're not going to have time to answer too many of these right now. If there's a show of hands if there's a question in the room for a particular panelist, we might have time for like one question, but please take a moment to write your questions out here. And when we get some questions in, we'll take a moment, sorry, some more work for you guys. We'll take a moment to answer your questions like in writing, and we can kind of publish that list of questions and answers. So feel free to ask anything that we might not have time to get into right now, but anything for our panel in particular that you'd like to know, and we can get into it more. In just a couple of minutes, do we have any questions in the room?
I think for Alan, how many people do you employ now, and what's your like 5-10-year plan for employees on the reservation?
We have about 20 employees about now, getting ready for the expansion. Ultimately, we are looking at container grows. They frown on grows out there. But we have a large solar field. So we're thinking about getting locked containers and doing grows inside there. And then, as I mentioned, looking into partnering with a hemp company to make a more environmentally friendly cannabis packaging is just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, I would like to see it become a bigger industry, maybe even rivaling our casino down the road. And I gotta say, I can't tell you how envious I am of you kids. When I was doing hemp rallies with Jack Harrer back in the early 90s, going to UC Davis, I asked if I could do a report on hemp in my horticulture class, and was told, quote, "No effing way." It's great to see the change.
All right. Thank you, Alan. And with that, we are going to wrap up. And I think there's one more speaker before the president of the university, and then we'll get to the good stuff at lunch. So thank you again, everyone. Thank you.
All right, next we have a little brief given by Reiner. She's a master's student in the Department of Sociology, and her research examines how legacy outdoor cannabis farmers from the Round Valley area of Mendocino are now legal landscapes of freedoms and constraints along with market pressures. All right.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Thanks for the introduction. And do you have my slides? Yes. Okay. That will help for sure. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to share a brief introduction of my research, and grateful to the cannabis farmers of the Round Valley area for sharing their stories with me. There it is in the next slide. And so this research is based on 17 interviews. 6 of them were done with Dr. Dominic Horva and Janet Chen for the Legacy Genetics Project, done between the fall of 2024 through winter of 2025, and also my own experiences of living and being a cannabis farmer in this area for 15 years. I used grounded theory traumatic mapping to find the themes that emerged from the interviews. And slide. So Round Valley is at the end of a very long and curvy highway with no paved roads going further. The valley and the surrounding mountains are home to Yuki people and other tribes, and is now a patchwork reservation along with the town of Koblo. My research does not include interviews with the tribes. This is a gap deserving further research. And it is also just a small piece of the much bigger picture of cannabis farming in this area. In the words of a farmer, Koblo has a history of being like the end of the road, people wanting to hide, people wanting to literally and figuratively get away from everything. This distance away from enforcement and the river valley and the surrounding mountains have made a fertile ground for cannabis farming since the Back to the Land movement in the 60s and 70s. This area is a good example to look at right now to see how rural communities are being impacted by regulations. Next slide. In 1967, there was a proposal to dam the Eel River and flood the valley. In an effort to prevent this from happening, Alan Chadwick was invited to come from UC Santa Cruz, where he was teaching regenerative farming, to do something called the Garden Project in Round Valley and to demonstrate the valley's agricultural value. This brought people to the area who wanted to learn how to do this. They stayed on, and these practices have continued. And they've been shared throughout the community and to all of the younger generations. A farmer who moved to Round Valley and worked at the Garden Project in the 70s talks about cannabis farmers in the area embraced what was learned there. In his words, all of the farmers here, the old timers and people, were all on board with the Chadwick technique because they wanted the purest stuff. It was all going to be tested, and it pretty much had to go organic, and did. And it supported the whole community. Two of Chadwick's favorite students established organic farms in the valley, and these farms have continued to bring people to the area who were interested in organic and regenerative farming, and they have stayed on and continued to grow food and also cannabis. Living more of a homestead lifestyle close to the land is a theme that is talked about often by farmers from this area of all ages. In the words of a younger farmer talking about her motivation to go back to the land and how it was planted like seeds by her grandmother when she would visit her in Puerto Rico on a very remote farm, much like in Round Valley. And there was something in me that I think cannabis inspired even more deeply when I started using her, was to reconnect with the earth and start tending the land. And that runs through my veins, I feel like, because that's what my ancestors have always done. The expenses of regulation and combined with a downturn in the market have been extremely challenging. In the words of a longtime farmer and a hemp and medical marijuana activist who was chosen for the first year to only grow for personal use. So the people who might look like they're doing well right now, the ones that I know, and she knows a lot of people, they are so far in debt. As is happening elsewhere, those who made it through permitting, even these people may not last. I know more than a few award-winning cannabis farmers from this area who have devoted their lives to growing some of the finest flowers. And for everyone's sake, I hope that they can continue to do so. Okay, next slide. As a remote rural area, community support and connections are very important. As policy was being created and throughout the entire process, the farmers from this area have been very active in advocating for themselves, our community, and forming advocacy groups. We formed cannabis cooperatives to support each other, to share knowledge and resources about how to make it through the permitting process, always sharing how to grow better cannabis, and also sharing local genetics that people have bred for plants that would grow well in the area. And also attempting to navigate what has been a rather treacherous regulated market. The connections that were strengthened through these groups and through these efforts continue to support the farmers there, even in these tough times. Caring for the environment is a concern that brings us all together here at the Symposium. And when talking to the farmers from this area, it is one of the things they express is their deep appreciation for cannabis and allowing them to live and work in the beauty that is the Round Valley area. The values that are still bringing people back to the land in Round Valley are expressed well by this farmer. The biggest value is to treat the land right, treat people right. That's the foundation of why we are here, is to bring healing and harmony back to the earth and ourselves, because we're all the same. Remote rural areas have the potential to be places where people and communities can thrive, linked closely with the land. The plant and the people have been cultivating and caring for each other in this area now for generations, giving each other the support to grow the finest flowers. This is a critical time to listen to the farmers that have persisted about how they can be supported in their efforts. Thank you.